Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tzadi, Daf 90 of Masechta Yevamos, friends. Daf 90 is a gewalt. What do you want me to tell you? I mean, we talk about whether or not Bezdin can or the Chacham can override something in the Torah. That's the Geshmak Sugya, no? So, friends, we're going to start there. We have a shtickle work to do, not a shtickle. We have some work to do from yesterday, because I was on my way to Chasana. So we got a shtickle work to do from yesterday. Lamaisa, tomorrow I'm going to have some work to do because, so let me tell you. So at the Chasana, I was basically trying to learn as much as I could at the Chasana. I got to the Chasana, and it didn't really start yet so much because the people who I was going with, I guess, wanted to get there on time. I guess I hear that. Anyway, so I got there, found like a quiet place, found like a table somewhere, joined a groove, and for the first hour of the Chasana, I was just pashut preparing Babylon Talmud. So that was good. I did like 3/4 of an Amud there, and then I was just trying to chaperine the rest of the time. It wasn't so pashut; it was just too complicated, but all right, I got epis. I mean, I got home late. Let's go weiter. So we're going to start on Daf Pei Tes. So Shalach Lei. So about mamish like halfway through the Amud on Daf Pei Tes. So who can remind me what Rav Chizda said yesterday? Rav Chizda said that if you have a fellow needs to separate truma, he needs to separate truma. So he says, I have a good idea. I've got this tamei produce. Why don't I just use that for my truma? Why should I use tahor stuff if I could just give the tamei stuff to the kohen? So Rav Chizda says, look, if you do that on purpose, so then it doesn't work at all. It doesn't work at all. I think we said it was jack squat. So the question is, if midoraisa, technically it should work as truma. So how could the Chacham say that, well, because you did it on purpose, it's jack squat? How could the Chacham do that? So that was what Rabbah challenged Rav Chizda, right? So Rabbah challenged Rav Chizda. He says, how can you just do that? Just say that it's jack squat. Shalchle Rav Chizda the Rabbah. So Rav Chizda sent back to Rabbah, Biad Ravacha bar Rav Huna, ve'ein bezdin maslan lakor davar min haTorah. What, Bezdin can't just override things in the Torah? Ve'atani, but we learn in the Brayso, me'masei adam yorish es ishto katana. So you have a fellow, and he's married to a minor. And so what happens if she dies? Can he inherit her? I mean, after all, so we're talking, let me also clarify, we're talking about a minor whose father had passed away and her brother or mother married her off, so it's only marriage midrabanan, and theoretically she could walk out at any time. And therefore, how do we, right, so, and then she goes to Elwood. So technically she could have walked, how do we know that she wasn't a week later going to walk out of this marriage? So how do we know if he can in fact inherit her? So Beishami says that, look, once she reaches 12 years old and she's no longer able to do meyun anymore, right? She's a naira at this point. So then at that point he could inherit her. Beisila says once they go under the chuppah. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer boil from when they have intercourse. Okay. And then at this point, whether according to Beishamai, Beisila, Rabbi Eliezer, so at that point he can inherit her. He could become Tometer if he's a Kohen. And if he's a Kohen and she's a Bas Yisrael, she can now eat Truma at this point. Beishamai Omer Mishatam B'Komosos. Now, affect the Gemara 1 second. Beishamai says that once she becomes 12 years old, she could now, he can inherit her. Wait, so you're saying that even though they never went under the chuppah, they would never actually, did nisuin, he would already be able to inherit her? How could that be? How could that be? Even an adult, if they don't do nisuin, if it's only erisin, he doesn't inherit her. Certainly not a ketana. No, rather it means, what Beishamai is saying, it means both things. That she has to go into the chuppah and also be of age. Whereas it sounds like Beis Hillel would say even if she was younger then that, once they went to the chuppah, he would be able to inherit her. This is what Beisham is saying to Beis Hillel. When you, Beis Hillel, say that once she's gone under the chuppah, under the marriage canopy, I was last night by a chuppah. I was at a chasana. So Beisham says to Beis Hillel that when you say that she just has to go under the chuppah and then they're considered, and then he can inherit her, Beis Shammai says, look, our opinion is that chuppah is only good if she is also 12 years old, right? Once she gets 12 years old and there was chuppah, so then he can inherit her, but before then, no. Rabbi Eliezer says, from when they have relations, this fellow and this minor fellow, Rabbi Eliezer say that the actions of a kitana are nothing, so how can they just have relations and then all of a sudden he can inherit her? No, so it means when she gets older and then they have relations. But 1 second. But we had said that he can inherit her, right? Certainly according to Beis Hillel, the article said even according to Beis Shammai, but Beis Shammai said you have to wait until she's an adult, so I don't understand why that would be midrabanan, unless maybe they went into the chuppah first and then she became an adult, but they didn't, have relations after that, maybe. But anyways, so now what the Gemara asks is, look, let's say at least according to Beis Hillel, right? Beis Hillel is saying that even if she's a minor, right? Once she goes onto the chuppah, even if she's still a minor, that's only going to be a union midrabanan, which means that technically her father, but her father's dead, so her father's relatives would be the ones to inherit her. And yet we're saying that because they went into the chuppah, so the husband can now inherit her. But that's against the biblical laws, which is that the father's inheritors wouldn't inherit her. So, and for the Gemara, Hefker, Bezdin, Hefker. Has anybody ever heard of that phrase? Hefker, Bezdin, Hefker? That Bezdin has the power on financial matters to make decisions. Literally to make things hefker, right? Ownerless. And therefore, Bezdin has the power to be able to say that the relatives of the father, their claims to this money of this deceased minor is null and void, and rather the money goes to the husband. So it's not sort of violating any din d'oraisa, rather it's operating in a separate clause, which is that Bezdin has the right to be able to make something hefker. And therefore, sure, maybe d'oraisa, technically the father's family inherits her, but Bezdin also said, yeah, but any of that money is going to be ownerless, and therefore, practically speaking, they don't have a right to it. And they say that right then is transferred to the husband. Okay, fine. So again, this isn't uprooting anything in Torah. It's operating under a separate clause, which is Hefker Bezdin Hefker. The Rabbi Yitzchok says, Hefker Bezdin Hefker. From where do we know this concept of Bezdin can just make property, monetary stuff ownerless? Shnemar, as the pasuk says, Kol asher liyavu l'shloshes hayom ba'atzas hasorim v'azkenim yochorom kol rechusho v'yibadu mikol ha'gola. Oh, so I think that this is Ezra who says this, that anybody who does not come in 3 days, based on the advice of the officers and the elders, well, all of his property will become cherim, forbidden, and he will be separated from the congregation of the exile. Basically, they're saying we have the power to be mafkir your stuff. Rabbi Elazar says, Rabbi Elazar from here, Eila anachlis asher nochalu Elazar HaKohen v'Yoshua ben Nun v'Rasha Avos Lamatos b'nei Yisrael. That it says, and these are the inheritances that Elazar HaKohen and Yoshua ben Nun inherited, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of Israel. What's the sort of juxtaposition? What's the relevance of the heads next to the fathers? Just like fathers can inherit to their children whatever they want. So also the heads, i.e. the Bezdin, is able to decide who gets what. I.e. they can be mafkir things from one person and give it to somebody else. Okay, So that's how we know that Hefker Bezdin Hefker. Now, in fact, the Gemara Mitamila, right? We said in addition to this fellow being able to inherit this minor, his wife who's a minor, so we also said that he could become Tomei to her, right? There's Machlokus, Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, Rabbi Eliezer about at what point, but whatever it is, at that point, he would be able to become Tomei to her. So Ve'ahacha d'midoraisa avia mitamila, midorabanan mitamila, Baal. So, for the Gemara, how could we just say, or at least according to Beis Hillel, right, if they're only married midorabanan, so how could the rabbis say that he would be allowed to become Tomei to her? So Mishum Dahavila Meis Mitzvah, because she's considered a Meis Mitzvah. Meis Mitzvah is somebody who dies and there's nobody to bury her. So in this case, the reason why he's able to become Tomei to her is because there's nobody to bury her. We have a Meis Mitzvah, but why would this Ketana who he's married to be considered a Meis Mitzvah? V'atani, we learn in the Brayso, Eizehu Meis Mitzvah. What's the definition of a Meis Mitzvah? Kol she'ein lo kovid. Somebody who mamish has nobody to bury her, him or her. Kori v'achirim onin. Also, ein ze meis mitzvah. Even if you have a person who, if he would call out for help and people would answer him and help him out, that's not considered a meis mitzvah. So, I would assume that over here, this girl has people to bury her. So why would she be considered a meis mitzvah? Why would her midrabanan husband be allowed to become Tomei for her if he's a kohen? So, and for the Gemara, hachanami hiroichet kevan de lo yarse lo karyev lo anu lo. That since nobody can inherit her, so basically if she calls out, nobody's going to answer her except for this husband, therefore he can bury her. And we also said that she would be able to eat truma on his account. How could she eat truma? Truma is, if a zar eats truma, it's misa bidei shamayim. So how could, if they're only married to Rabbanan, how could she eat truma? So we're talking about she can eat truma derabbanan. Alright, fine, very nice. So, we tried to, bring a question, right? Rav Chizda tried to bring a question against Rabbah, right? Rav Chizda tried to prove that, Bezdin can uproot things from the Torah, but we said, no, we're not actually uprooting anything from the Torah. Hefker Bezdin Hefker, Meis Mitzvah, Truma D'Rabbanan, we're not actually uprooting anything Midoraisa Toshma. But Rav Chizda, he goes weiter, he says, but listen to this. Ochal Truma Tmeya. If you have a fellow, a non-kohen, a fellow, a zar, he eats truma tmeya. He eats, by accident, truma that was impure. So, mishalim chulin tehorim. So, what he has to do is, so you have a kohen has truma. This truma is tmeya. He can't eat it. It's truma tmeya. He can't eat it. A zar comes along, he doesn't realize what it is, and he eats it. So, the zar has to pay back the kohen this truma tmei, but he has to pay him back with chulin tohorin. Mishalim chulin tohorim. He has to pay him back with pure chulin. Shilim chulin tmei. What if he paid him back with impure chulin? Sumchus omer mishum. Reb Meir says sumchus nanim Reb Meir b'shogeg tashlum of tashlumin. Well, if it was an accident, say there accidents happen. B'meizin in tashlum of tashlumin. But if he did it on purpose, forget about it. Does not work. Chacham say Chacham say whether he did it by accident, whether he did it on purpose, if he paid him back with chulin tmein, it works. And then he has to go back and pay chulin tohorim nonetheless. Fine. But the chulin tmein that he paid works. And we asked, Reb Meir had said that if he intentionally pays back the kohen with tamei chulin, then it doesn't work at all. Tava alav bracha, which the Gemara says, and this is a little bit weird, it's a little bit hard to understand these next few lines, but the Gemara says, look, tava alav bracha. I don't understand. This fellow accidentally ate truma that was tamei. You can't eat truma that's tamei, right? The kohen, there's nothing you can do with truma tamei. He then replaced it with chulin tamei. So, the Gemara wants to, the question of the Gemara is basically the gist of it. It's a little bit hard to understand, but the gist of it is like basically, well, he basically ate something by accident which was inedible to the Kohen, Truma Tmeya, and he replaced it with Chulin Tmeim, but Chulin Tmeim is edible to the Kohen. So therefore, I don't understand what he did wrong. Why is Reb Meir saying that if he replaces the Truma Tmeya with Chulin Tmeya, it doesn't count at all if he did it on purpose. Why? At least the kohen can eat that. He ate from the kohen something that the kohen is not allowed to eat. I don't know, it says when he's tameh. I don't know, he's not allowed to eat it when he's tahor either. But anyways, become a shalim, midi de kachazile b'mei tumaso, and he's paying him back with something that he would be able to consume when he is tameh. Even though, as Rashi points out, when he pays it back, it becomes truma anyway, so then you probably can't eat it. But anyways, it's a little bit unclear what the question is. But V'amar Rav, and says Rav, V'amila kidi, some say it's unattributed. Chasuri mechzor v'achi katone, it's missing a few words, and this is how you have to understand the brisa. Ochel truma tmeya, so if you have a fellow azar, and he eats truma tmeya by accident, mishalim koldu, so he could pay back with anything, right? He ate truma tmeya by accident, he could pay back with chulin tar or chulin tameh, it doesn't matter. Ochal truma tahora, what if he ate truma tahora? Now, truma tahora, obviously the kohen was able to eat. Mishalim chulin tahorin. Well, if you ate truma tahora, so you have to pay it back with chulin tahora. Shilim chulin tameim. What if you paid it back with chulin that was tameh? Sumchus omer mishum Reb Meir. So it says sumchus in the name of Reb Meir. B'shogeg tashlum of tashlumin. Look, if it was an accident, seder, accidents happen, it's fine. B'meizir ain't tashlum of tashlumin. But if deliberately he paid back the truma tmeya that he ate, the truma tmeya that he ate, where am I? Yeah, wait, what? No, wait, what? Now I got lost. If he where even am I? If he friends, let's take a deep breath. If he accidentally, so we're talking, friends, I only slept 4 hours last night. Friends, deep breath. He accidentally ate truma tahor. Talking about truma tahor. That's right. That's what we're talking about. The fellow, the Zor, accidentally ate truma tahor. So we say we have to pay, so he has to pay it back with chulin tahor. What if he paid it back with chulin tmeya? So we say, look, if it was by accident, accidents happen, it's fine. If it was deliberate, so then it says sumchus in the name of Reb Meir that it doesn't work at all. Right? B'meizid in tashum of tashum, it doesn't work at all. The Chacham say whether he paid back with truma tmeya by accident or on purpose, tashum of tashum, it still works. B'chol of mashalim, but he still chulin tarim, but he still does need to pay back chulin tarim. Fine. Now here's the question. Tashlume me'al yahavik. Now here's the kasha. Mida oraisa, he ate this truma tahora by accident. When he pays back with truma tmeya, mida oraisa, it works. Right? As we saw, I believe yesterday, the opinion of Rabbi Eli, who says minayin l'torim min hara la yafa shetruma so truma. Right? The mida oraisa, if he pays back with the truma tmeya, it works. The imekadish bu koyin isha tafsla kedushin, and if a koyin would take this truma tmeya that he received, this chulin tmeya that he received, and he'd be makadish a woman with it, she would be married, she would be betrothed to him. Ve'amur rabbanan, and Reb Meir is saying in tashlum of tashlumin that it doesn't work. It's not going to be relevant, therefore, if he pays back the kohen with this truma tmeya, he pays back the kohen for having eaten truma tahora, he pays him back with chulin tmeya deliberately. If Reb Meir is saying that it counts as nothing, well then theoretically, if a kohen would then take that chulin tmeya and betroth a woman with it, Reb Meir would be saying, well, it's not his. It's irrelevant. And yet, and you'll be saying that, okay, so he can't actually betroth the woman with it. Even though midoraisa he can. So here we see that the rabbis are able to say that, look, this chulin tmeya does not work, and if a kohen then betroths a woman with this chulin tmeya, she's not married, and she's not neishes ish. So the rabbis, even though midoraisa she would be married, because it would be considered payback. So we see that the rabbis are able to sort of override something in the Torah. And for the Gemara, Mayin Tashlum of Tashlumin, what does it mean that it's not considered paying back with the chulin tmeya if he does it deliberately? Tashlumin, so my in Tashlumin de Ka'amar, Reb Meir de Boy le Meheder Shalume, it just means Chulin Torah, and it just means that he still needs to pay back additionally Truma Tahor, Chulin Tahor, right? Meaning he ate Chulin Tahora, no, he ate Truma Tahora by accident. So Reb Meir is saying that if he deliberately pays it back with Chulin Tameya, it counts, yeah, but he still needs to pay back with Chulin Tahora as well. But then he's saying the same thing as the rabbis. The rabbis, what did the rabbis say? The rabbi said, but he still has to pay Chulin Tahora. So now basically, both Reb Meir and the rabbis are saying that you still that it counts as trum as tashlumin, but you have to still pay from Chulin Tahora. So Amr Rav Acha b'Rav Ika Kansu Shogeg Atu Mezid Ike Benayu. That the nafkamina is what about Shogeg? That according to Reb Meir, if he accidentally gave the Chulin Tameya as payback, so then it works completely, full stop. Whereas according to the rabbis, we say both by Shogeg and by Mezid, he would still have to pay back Chulin Tahorin. Okay, so we tried to prove that the rabbis can override something midoraisa, but we turned out saying that isn't actually the case. Toshma, come in here, friends. Dam shenitma. What if you have a korban, an animal sacrifice, and you have to take the blood of the animal sacrifice and throw it onto the altar? What if it became tamei? Zarko b'shogeg hortza. So if you threw it on the altar by accident, so beseder, it's fine. B'mezid lo hortza. But if you throw it on the altar intentionally, this animal blood that became impure, and you intentionally threw it on the altar, lo hortza, it doesn't work. Now over here, in this case, mida oraisa, this throwing this blood on the altar would work. Titanias, we learned in Brisa, al matzitz miratze, for what does the tzitz appease? Al adam val basar, for blood, for meat, val chelev, and on forbidden fats, right? Well, the chelev, it's forbidden to us, but it goes in the mizbeach, so it's permitted in the mizbeach. But chelev, shenitma, that became tamei, ben b'shogeg, ben b'mezid, whether by accident, whether on purpose, ben ba'onus, ben b'rotzin, by whether intentional or by happen chance, ben b'yach, ben b'tzibor, whether for an individual korban or a communal korban. V'amir rabbanon, and the rabbis say lo hortza, and yet the rabbis are saying that it doesn't work, right? The tzitz that the Kohen Gadol wears on his forehead, so it sort of fixes, it appeases for tuma in korbanos. So therefore, it's meratze even for the blood, and therefore mida oraise, this blood that became tamei is really tahor, and yet the rabbis are saying, ve'amir rabbanan, the rabbis are saying lo hortza, that if he deliberately threw this blood onto the altar, it doesn't work, and therefore now when he comes and says, okay, well, I guess that korban didn't work, and he brings another korban, that's a problem, because he brings chulin into the azar. Because really, midoraisa, the first korban worked, because the tzitz was miratze. And if we're saying that the rabbis are saying, no, it doesn't work because you deliberately threw the blood onto the altar, well then what are you going to do? You got to bring a replacement. But that replacement really didn't have to bring, because midoraisa, the first one worked. Milo, what does it mean that it doesn't work if you did it deliberately? It just means that you're not allowed to eat the meat, meaning no, it worked as a korban. The owners got whatever atonement they needed to get. Where it fell short was that the owners are not going to be eating it. Right. Well, the kohanim aren't going to eat it. Right. That nobody's going to eat the meat because you deliberately threw it on the mizbeach, even though you knew it was tummy. Okay, but still, at the end of the day, the rabbis are saying that nobody's going to eat this meat, but there's a mitzvah to eat the meat. The pasuk says, that those who got atoned by them will eat them. We learn out from there is that by the kohanim eating the meat of like a korban chatas, for example, so the owners who brought it then get their atonement by the kohanim eating the meat. And you're telling me that because they deliberately threw the blood onto the altar, the kohanim can no longer eat the meat? Yeah, we say it's exactly what we're saying. The kohanim refrain from eating the meat because it's shev ve'al taise. There's a difference between deliberately uprooting a mitzvah in the Torah versus just falling asleep at the wheel and letting it just sort of, fall apart on its own, Right here, we're not saying violate anything. We're just saying, because you threw the blood on the Mizbeach, sit back and just don't eat the meat, right? The rabbis could say, don't do something. They can't say violate something, but they could say refrain from doing something. Omar Lei, and Rav Chisda says to Rabbi, I was about to ask you a whole bunch of situations where the rabbis seem to be going against something, overriding something in the Torah, and we're about to list what they are. But the truth is, all of them are Sheva al Taiseh, and if we're saying that Sheva al Taiseh is, the rabbis could say just, refrain from doing something, so that explains all of these cases. For example, Orel, right? We say that if a fellow converts to Judaism on Erev Pesach, and he gets a bris milah, so then he doesn't eat the Korban Pesach that night, out of concern that maybe the next year will be tummy or whatever it is. So the rabbis are able to say, look, sit back and don't eat Korban Pesach. Yeah. Okay. Right. And also, for example, if it's Shabbos, right, if Erev Pesach is Shabbos and it's also the last day of somebody's like Tumas HaMeis, and we say, even though it's only a Shavuos, that we don't do Azah on Shabbos, still we say, don't do Azah on Shabbos, and you won't end up eating the Korban Pesach that night. V'izmol, a knife to do bris milah, right? We say that even though mida oraisa, there are ways to be able to carry it, but we say don't carry it, even if it means not to do the bris milah on Shabbos. Sodim b'tzitzis, we say that even though mida oraisa, you can have shatnez and tzitzis, as we learned at the very beginning of Masechta Yevamos, but the rabbis say don't do it. B'chivtzei atzeres, as well as the sheep of Shavuos. This is talking about a situation where you accidentally slaughtered the sheep of Shavuos without the proper intention, and the rabbis say in that case just don't do Zrikas Hadam. V'shofar, also when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, V'lulav, or when Sukkot falls out on Shabbos, we say, right, that you don't blow shofar on Shabbos, you don't bring lulav on Shabbos, we don't shake the lulav on Shabbos. All of those cases, Hashad the Shanas Lon Sheva al Taiset Lo Mi'aker Hu Hulunami Sheva al Taiset Ninu. So once Rabbah, you have sort of highlighted the fact that when it comes to Sheva al Taiset, that when it comes to the rabbi saying, look, don't violate something, but refrain from doing something. Now I understand all of these cases, right? For example, right, shofar on Rosh Hashanah, when it falls on Shabbos, the rabbis aren't saying right, they're not saying do something wrong, they're saying don't blow shofar. Hold back, refrain from doing something. So that they can do. Tashma, Komanir, Elov Tishmayun, that it says in the context of a Navi, a truthful Navi. It says, listen to him, Afilu Omer Lecha, even if he says to Avor Alachas Mikom Mitzvah Shebateirah, even if the prophet says to violate a mitzvah in the Torah, Kagon Eliyahu Bar Carmel, for example, Elijah on the Carmel mountain, Hakol Fisha Shmalo, listen to him. So we see that Eliyahu Hanavi Taka told the people to violate something in the Torah, to bring a korban outside of the Beis Hamikdash at a time that you were not allowed to make your own private altars. It's different there because it says Dafka in the pasuk Elev Tishmayun, listen to him. So why don't we just learn out from there that just like by a Navi, you can listen to him even if he's saying to violate something in the Torah. So then in general the rabbis can violate things in the Torah. Migdar Milsa Shani. It was different in that case because that was to make a fence around the Torah. People were worshipping Avodah Zarah, and in order to prevent them from worshipping Avodah Zarah and to have them do tshuva, that's why he did this whole thing. But that was kind of an exception that we can't actually learn out from there to sort of generalize this concept of rabbi, the Rabbanan violating things in the Torah. Tashma come in here. Batnu mevutul Tivei Rebbe. Who could tell me what this is talking about? What it's talking about is that mida oraisa, as long as the get has not arrived at to the wife, the husband can sort of be mevatel, right? Meaning if a husband sends a get to his wife, and then some point before it gets to her, right, he sends it with a messenger, some point before it gets to her, he maybe goes to another bezdin and cancels it or something, so it's canceled, right? And until she receives it, he could do that. But now, however, Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken made an enactment, and he said, look, that's a slippery slope. Let's not do that, right? And he says that a bezdin is unable to nullify a get, once a get is written and sent out, it can no longer be tampered with in any way. So Tashma, come in here. Badlu Muvutul, that if they're Mavatal, what if after Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken made his edict, nonetheless a Bezdin was Mavatal, a get after it had already been sent but before it was received? Badlu Muvutul Divrei Rebbe. Rebbe says, look, if a Bezdin was Mavatal this get, it's batal. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, whereas Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rebbe's father, says, no way, no how. This Bezdin would be unable to be mavatal this get, or to alter in any way, once it has been sent. It became HaKoyach Bezdin Yaveh, because if you say that Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken can make an edict that it's forbidden to tamper with the get once it's been sent, and yet we're going to say that if Bezdin sort of tampers with the get after it's been sent, it works, like Rebbe is saying, then, what does that mean about the koach of Bezdin? Kilu, then what's kind of the point of Bezdin? It sort of shows Bezdin as being sort of worthless and powerless. If Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken can make an edict, and at the end of the day, even if you violate the edict, it really doesn't matter. So then, what does it say about the strength of Bezdin to be able to be effective? Bottle get. It's not like Gemara asks a stark kasha. It says, look, mida oraisa, as long as the wife has not received the get, so it hasn't been sort of acted upon yet, and you can cancel it or alter it or do whatever you want, as long as she hasn't received it yet. And therefore, mida oraisa, he could cancel this get before she receives it, and that means that she's still an Eishes, that she's still married. But out of concern of how would that look for the efficacy of Bezdin, if Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken could make an edict and yet it doesn't actually have any practical effect. So out of that concern, the rabbis are saying that, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is saying that even if Bezdin cancels a get before it's been received, it still remains a kosher get. Now, mida oraisa, it is not a get because she hasn't received it yet, and they canceled it. But out of concern for what would that look about, how would that what would that mean for the strength of Bezdin, for the efficacy of Bezdin to make gezeres, if we allow the Bezdin to cancel a get after it's been sent? And therefore, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that if Bezdin cancels it, it does not work. Even though mida oraisa it does work, but he's saying that mida rabbanan it does not work, and therefore it's still a good get, and you're going to treat her as now having been divorced, and she's going to marry another man, and the children are going to be mamzer mida oraisa. So we see that Bezdin does have the ability to uproot something even mida oraisa. So man de mekadesh that the rabbanan mekadesh, to which the Gemara answers, look, when a person gets married, he gets married adaita de rabbanon, based on the sort of intention of the rabbis. When a person gets married, he gets married, with the intent to have a halachic marriage in however the rabbis define marriage. And therefore, by Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken saying that part of marriage is that when a marriage dissolves via a divorce document, it cannot be canceled once it's been sent. So then when a person gets married, he's getting married with the intention that in a situation like this, where that a fellow sends a get, so v'afka'inu rabbanon l'kiddushin, basically by sending this get, he's undoing the kiddushin retroactively and making the money that he gave to his wife as kesef kiddushin as just a gift, and they're not actually married. And therefore, it's not like a situation of gittin, right? Meaning, yes, mida oraisa, this other bezdin would be able to cancel the get. Right? And if this other bezdin canceled the get, it's not a good get, and they're still married. However, the rabbis are saying, what Rabbi Gamliel HaZaken's edict is accomplishing, is that since we know that when a person gets married, he gets married based on the halachas of the rabbis, he marries women based on the halachas of the rabbis. So part of the halachas of the rabbis is that when you send a get, it basically makes the retroactively makes the money that he gave her not actual marriage money, and therefore they're not actually married, and I guess you don't even need a get in this case. So this makes sense if he betrothed her with money. But what if he was mekadesh with bia? So shavua rabbanon levilasu bilas nus. Well, the rabbis treat this beila when he slept with her, the shem kiddushin, as just nus. So also not actual marriage, and they're not married. They don't need a divorce document, and because a person gets married with the intention of the rabbis, this is sort of how the rabbis set things up. Tashma coming here, Amr B'Eliezer ben Yaakov, Shamaiti shebezdin makin v'onshin shalom and atere, that I heard that Bezdin can hit people and punish people, even for things that are not necessarily midah oraisa. And it's just in order to make sort of a fence around the Torah umaisa. And there was a story that there was a fellow who was riding on a horse on Shabbos during the time of the Greeks. Now, of course, riding a horse on Shabbos is a shvus. It's also midirabanan. And they stoned him. Now, that's pretty severe, right? That's basically murder. If he's not chayiv skila, if it's only midirabanan, he's not actually midoraisa chayiv skila, then you're murdering him for no reason. And it wasn't that midoraisa he was chayiv skila, but just that they felt that they needed to do it at the time, because I guess the Greeks were making a mess, and this guy wasn't listening to the rabbis, and they felt that they had to stone him. There was a fellow who had intercourse with his wife in public under a palm fig tree, a palm tree. And they brought him to Bezin, and they gave him malchus, lashes. Not because he was chayiv midoraisa, but just because that they felt that was necessary. So we see that the rabbis are right. You can't just hit somebody for no reason, right? You can't. You're not allowed to do it. You can't kill somebody for no reason. But migdar milsa shining. But that's not a proof that the rabbis can simply uproot things in the Torah. Rather, that was to make a fence around the Torah, and that was more like an exception to the rule, and that's why it was okay. Okay, so basically, Rav Chizda was unable to prove that the rabbis would be able to uproot things that are in the Torah, sort of just generally. Sheva al taisa, however, would be okay, right? They would be able to say, refrain from doing something. For example, don't blow shofar when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. All right. Neither husband, right? Meaning, back to the case in our Mishnah, right? Her husband went on a trip, and then she found out that he died. She got remarried. He comes back. So we say that neither husband would be able to become tamei to her. Minolan, how do we know this? Right, meaning if they're a kohen and she dies, how do we know? Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, Kim l'shera akar v'elav, that he's only able to become tamei to his she'er, v'amar mar she'er zo ishto. We said that that's a reference to his wife. Uchsiv lo yutam ba'am ba'amav le'echalu. But we also say that a husband cannot become tamei to his wife. Yesh ba'al she'mitame, v'yesh ba'al she'ein mitame. So there are certain husbands that are able to get tamei for their wives, and some husbands who are unable to become tamei for their wives. So he's able to get tamei for his wife he's permitted to be married to, but not his wife who's not permitted to be married to, and therefore in this case they cannot become tamei to her. If she finds stuff, they cannot have it. How come in the first place, if she finds stuff, her husband can chop it? My time of my Amar Rabbanim Mitzias Isha Levaila. How come the rabbis say that what a woman finds goes to her husband? So that he shouldn't get upset. If she's like finding all this cool stuff and he's not allowed to chop it around, he might get upset. But over here, we don't want them to be married, so let him get upset. And he doesn't chop around the stuff that she makes. Time of my Amir Rabbanon, how come the rabbis say that what she makes goes to her husband? Well, because he's supporting her. She's eating the food that he's buying for her. So, if she makes stuff, at least he gets that. And over here, since he doesn't support her and pay for her food and stuff, so therefore the stuff that she makes doesn't go to him either. And he does not annul her vows. How come the rabbi said that a husband can annul the vows of his wife? The reason why a husband can annul his wife's vows is because, well, maybe she's going to make a vow, as Rashi says, like maybe she's going to decide that she's not going to bathe anymore. And that wouldn't be very fun for the husband, because if his wife just stops bathing forever, that could be potentially become unpleasant very quickly. So therefore the rabbis say that he can annul her vows, so that if she says that she's never going to shower ever again, he could say, oh yeah, you are. Vow annulled. Shower now, please. Okay. Well, friends, that was Daf Tzadi of Masechta Yevamos. So we basically continued on the discussion, the machlokas that we started yesterday with Rabba and Rav Chizda, about that Rav Chizda seems to say that the rabbis can uproot things in the Torah. Rabba was challenging him, and Rav Chizda tried to bring proofs. Basically what we said is that when it comes to Sheva al Taisa, the rabbis could say, look, refrain from doing certain things. We also saw that there were certain exceptional cases. For example, Elijah the prophet on Mount Carmel, or there were some other examples in the time of the Greeks. But as a general rule, the rabbis would not be able to uproot things in the Torah. Peace out, bye.